Welcome to the Jeremy and Andy Talk Movies podcast. I am Jeremy.
Welcome. I am Andy,
All
or at
right,
least
and
this multiverse's version of Andy.
yeah, which is the best Andy?
Yeah, I think so. There's other inferior ones floating out there somewhere on different Earths and multiverses.
Exactly. The lesser ones don't have an amazing podcast, so
No, they don't at all.
but this one does, and so we are excited to do the thing that we love doing, which is talking about new release movies. But before we jump into that, I just want to quickly get an update because last week I mentioned about your boy Mitt having his knee injury, and we said, hopefully everybody out there could be praying for Mitt. And I think we got some good news. Andy, you want to let the people know what the good news was?
Listen, you get a bunch of movie nerds praying, and look out. That's a force to be reckoned with. No, we did get some good news. We think early diagnosis is that it's a bad sprain, which is much better news than a tear of anything. So we are hoping to confirm that. We're talking maybe just 4-6 weeks instead of 6 or 8 months being out. So appreciate it. Appreciate you giving me the platform to share a prayer request on here, and seems to be working. So we're going to continue to pray. We're going to get an MRI this week and confirm, and then come up with a plan of action to get Mitt back on the football field for his senior year. So thank you, and thank you everyone who listened and prayed.
We're just excited that it's good news, and I, don't want to overstate the importance of the podcast and what it had to do with it. But I think obviously
there seems to be a correlation. Yeah. So we are talking about movies and furthering prayer requests and helping the youth of America get back on the football field. So we don't just talk about movies on here is the point. We do good on here.
That's right. Exactly. So this week, our big movie of the week is Deadpool and Wolverine, of course. This was one of the most anticipated movies of the year for multiple reasons. One, I've said in the past, I'm just a fan of the Deadpool movies. Yeah. And so I would have been interested in this movie just on its own accord, but I think also because of its significance or hopeful significance in the whole MCU, going forward. Because the MCU, as we all talked about, it's felt a little lost since we've had Endgame, and people are like, is it just on the downside of the mountain? Did it peak and now it's just all downhill? And so the big question was Deadpool Wolverine, is this going to be the thing that kind of gives it new life, gets it going back uphill again? And so let me actually start with this. One is I think a lot of people were excited to see this movie because I have not had issues in a long time getting tickets to a showing of a movie. Friday night, IMAX at my local theater, it was, I'm not going to say totally sold out, but like you're picking seats on the very side of the theater or the very front of the theater. That's it. Everything else is packed out.
You didn't get your prime spot?
I didn't. So I didn't even go to the showing I went to. I ended up going to like a 12:45 in the afternoon showing instead of a nighttime showing because it was so packed out. And I drove by the theater at night, and I had not seen the theater that packed, like the parking lot, in a long time. And I thought that's just a great sight to see, just a packed parking lot for a theater.
Did you see the Friday numbers for this movie?
I saw some headlines, and I wasn't sure which one to kind of latch on to.
It made $96 million on Friday.
That's incredible. That's an incredible opening day.
I think they're looking at, last I read, it could go as high as $205 million domestic for the weekend.
Man, it is unbelievable how the box office has turned in the month of July.
I mean, it was, listen, it was really struggling. And whether I like the movies or not, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Twisters, and now Deadpool and Wolverine are bringing it back big time. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and we even have to throw Long Legs in there, even though it's not on the scale of those movies. For the movie for a horror movie, it's doing great.
It's a hit. Can I give you just a really quick side note? Because I did promise an update. I did take Molly to see Long Legs, and she is currently debating as to whether or not it's her favorite movie of all time.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. There it is. I
So
wondered if
just
she would. Yeah.
a strong update there.
Okay.
Yeah, she couldn't have possibly loved it more.
Great. Man, that's wild. I will
Yeah.
look forward to
So
getting some more specific thoughts from Molly and what she,
yeah.
what
So
exactly she
a
loved
lot
about
of
it.
wins for movies in July.
Yeah, that's incredible. All right, so
Hmm.
let's get into it. Let's talk about whether or not this movie that is obviously going to be a box office success, whether
Yes.
this movie is a success in all its facets. So the first
Okay.
thing I just want to start with is this: is this the movie that's going to save the MCU, Andy?
I got to tell you, my initial thought is to say no. But there's a lot to that. Not no in the sense that this was not a good, enjoyable movie, because it was. And are you wanting to do spoilers versus non-spoilers, or are we just diving in?
I wanted to try to do a little non-spoilers before we went
That's fine.
spoilers, but we're going to have to go spoilers pretty early on this one.
I can do that. So I was really, really entertained by this movie, as it would be very hard not to be, with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds basically giving free reign to just do their thing. So that's fantastic. It did not, to me, solve the bigger MCU issues that are going on right now. And I'll just leave it at that until we can get into some spoilers. So I think it was a win. It's obviously a win in the box office, and I'm happy for Marvel about that. I really am. I'm happy about that. It's a win as far as I was entertained. It was not a win as far as bringing back some much needed focus and direction to the MCU, in my opinion.
I'm going to agree completely with you, and maybe I should say some of these comments in spoiler section. I don't think this is spoilery to say, but I was like, I think this movie was the opposite of a movie that saves the MCU. To me, it felt like a swan song to the MCU. It felt like they were going, hey, we know all of that's kind of on the way out, so let's just set everything on fire, is what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have an argument for that at all.
Yeah. So, again, maybe it's unfair to say that it failed on that front, because maybe that's never what this movie was going for. Maybe that's something that just fans were hoping for and saying, here's an opportunity maybe to kind of fix the MCU. And the makers of this movie might be looking at everybody going, this is a Deadpool movie. You really expected us to fix the MCU with this? That's not really what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's like, if you're going to look at this from the angle, if you ignore the MCU and go, was this a good, successful Deadpool movie? I'm going to say yes. 10 times out of 10, I'm going to say yes. I laughed. I was entertained. They didn't try, it's just like, here's exactly what you want and expect from Deadpool. Plus, here's what you want if we throw Wolverine into the mix. So a complete win on that front.
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's just do it. Let's go ahead and do our spoiler warning. I feel like if anybody's going to listen to this, they're going to watch the movie. But because this movie is so hard to talk about without
It's
spoilers,
so hard to talk about without spoilers.
I think some of the things I'm going to talk about still probably aren't too spoilery, but just in case, just to to wave that flag.
Maybe it's like we'll ease into the spoilers, because look, this is not a spoiler to say the big spoilers are all the cameos in this movie.
Absolutely.
So maybe we can kind of work our way into that if people still want to listen, but they don't want to have the cameos given away.
Yeah. So, my next note was that I rewatched both Deadpool movies in preparation for this this week, and I think the original is actually still my favorite of the Deadpool movies. It's the simplest, in large part just because of budget, but I'm making up these percentages, but I said it was about 75% its own thing and about 25% in jokes about superhero movies in the original one.
Yeah.
And I said, which is a lot. 25% of your movie being basically jokes about other superhero movies is a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That said, I feel like this one flips that ratio to 25% its own thing, 75% in jokes about superhero movies. Right?
There's a lot.
And as I wrote that, what came to mind was the movie Spaceballs and them saying, light speed's too slow, go to ludicrous speed. And they were like, let's put the in jokes at ludicrous speed. It's just going to be Like all of this
Just
is
one
basically
after another.
satire of superhero movies. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's what I'm saying, where like that plus with the cameo stuff we'll get to, like where this just didn't give me, so I guess I should say this. What I think the MCU needs is direction and focus. And this movie is the opposite of focused. You know what I mean? Because like
Absolutely.
you said, it's just joke, joke, joke. You know, break the fourth wall, and you know that's coming from Deadpool. So the fact that it was there didn't bother me. The amount was a little excessive, and the timing of it, where you're going, man, this is funny. Like this is fun and this is funny, but is this what the MCU needs right now? And to me, that's a big fat no. What they need right now is some hardcore focus and, no pun intended, but some kind of end game that they're working towards. And so so it didn't give me that, you know. And again, maybe it's not supposed to, but as an MCU fan who is still trying to stay loyal and to go see all these movies when they come out, I do have to ask myself, like, man, how many times since Endgame can I go to an MCU movie and walk away going, well, you know, like it was pretty good, and they certainly delivered on the wacky cameos, but you know, and I've got a lot more to say about the cameos, so I'll stop for now.
Yeah, that'll be. I'm sure we'll have a good lengthy discussion about the cameos. So my next note was, as much as they joked about undoing Logan, which there was a lot of references to, like, hey, Logan ended on this perfect note for Wolverine as a character, and yeah, we know we're kind of digging the character back up, and you know, everybody's worried we're going to ruin its legacy. What they really did, to me, was undo Deadpool 2. Now, I know Deadpool 2 is not going to be considered on any sacred ground. It's not this great finish to a story like Logan, so I get why that's the case. But I'm watching it and going, like, you know what I didn't need to rewatch for any of this movie was Deadpool 2. Because they did not give a crap about anything that happened in that Deadpool movie. Of all the characters they brought back, you know who wasn't back in this movie? Cable, Domino, the kid with the fire hands, TJ Miller's character, Weasel. They did bring back Shatterstar somehow, which was one of the heroes who died in the first one in that comedic all the heroes die scene. Literally the only thing that carried over from Deadpool 2 that mattered in this movie was the character of Peter, which I thought was the last part they should have carried over, because that joke tired out to me in Deadpool 2. And
what's his roommate's name? Big Al or whatever?
Yeah.
Whatever that, yeah.
So they're sitting around and it's like his whole thing is, oh, this is my family. And you're like, yes, those are characters from the first two movies, but you're literally missing half the characters from the first two movies and some of the most important ones.
Yep. So that's kind of sloppy right off the get-go.
Yeah. And this movie, so this movie really felt disconnected from any previous movie. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's going to feel disconnected from the Wolverine movies because it's pulling Wolverine into the Deadpool universe, and it's it's a Wolverine from a different universe or whatever. But the first two Deadpool movies felt very connected to me. They felt, you know, like a continuation of their story. This movie completely did not care about any previous Deadpool lore they made in the movies, and it kind of bummed me out. That just, I don't know. It just didn't feel like the same Deadpool at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. And the you know, even like the girlfriend character, or I guess it's his ex-girlfriend, that all just felt very, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, either make them a part of this story or don't, but I really just don't need those boring scenes of them having like a birthday party for him. Like, that just did nothing and accomplished nothing. And like you said, it was like some of them are here, but there's very clearly some characters who weren't bought. Like Domino is such a big part of Deadpool 2. And also, she's really good in that movie. And if they couldn't get her back, that's fine. But then you're kind of stuck, you know, hanging out with these less interesting characters. And like the poor girlfriend character just has absolutely nothing to do in this movie, except to just kind of sit there like a doofus. And so that, you know, that just amounted to a whole lot of nothing.
Not only nothing to do, but like she's kind of supposed to be the motivation behind, or the person behind the motivation for the Deadpool character for the movie, being like, I've got to have a purpose. And suddenly she's like a normal person who needs him to be a normal person. It's like that doesn't fit her character from the first two movies at all. Like it's just, it's clearly like hey, we don't really need this character, but we're writing our own thing, and we need a character who does this, so we're going to make her this now.
Mm-hmm.
And that just was pretty bad. Let's just go ahead and talk about this. Again, I know all of these things, these nitpicks, are too easily shoot away, but it's a Deadpool movie. Like, it's,
And it
what are you,
like
what are you
anything
expecting?
goes.
Yeah, what are you?
Yeah.
But that said, like, what is the story of this movie? This movie story is so nonsense that it kills me. Like, the motivation for Deadpool already talked about, the whole, like, I've got to have a purpose thing that just doesn't fit his character at all from the previous movies. And I wrote the disconnect with his girlfriend that doesn't go along. Why the character Paradox brings in Deadpool in the first place really
It's all
doesn't
very
make any
muddy.
sense.
It really doesn't.
And the whole idea of a critical being on a timeline, like, all of it is like, this is all so dumb and so bad. If this was any other movie other than a Deadpool movie, we'd all be going, this is so dumb, I can't accept this. But because it's a Deadpool movie,
It gets a pass.
and because, the whole thing is that they make fun of the superhero movies, it almost can work as an advantage, because if you give him a terrible generic plot, he just gets to make more jokes about the plot.
Yeah.
That said, I don't really feel like that's what they did. I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities because they were so busy making jokes about every other movie that they didn't really make jokes about their own movie they were in.
Yep, that's completely fair. And yeah, so as far as the plot's concerned, once they are, what is it called? The Void. Okay, they're in the Void. That story, when they would focus on it, didn't bother me. I was like, okay, this is a fairly, even though it's a convoluted mess with all this multiverse stuff, just taking a look at they're stuck in the void and they want to get out. That was fine. And I'll tell you, I will say, because I do want to be positive in some points, because I did like this movie. I really liked the villain. I thought she did a good job. She didn't have a lot to do. She's not in the movie a lot. The villain didn't bother me. The kind of the quest they're on didn't bother me. The explanation of like, yeah, we cast this, Charles Xavier's twin out here into the void. None of that stuff bothered me. They're just so, like I said, instead of just having like the straight line from, point A to point B, they take so many little side quests, whether it's for jokes or for, da-da-da-da-da. But, that story of them in the void didn't really bother me that much. That was fine. But there's so much within that story. It's like this movie just has ADHD.
It's exactly like that. That's a great way of describing it. Just like, a little too much going on. Like I said, I think the reason the first Deadpool is my favorite is because it's the simplest.
It's pretty straightforward.
And this movie really could have benefited from simplifying, which is funny because I read just this morning, I think, that the Ryan Reynolds and the filmmakers actually didn't take as much money for this movie as Disney was willing to give them, because they were like, the first Deadpool, because we had all these constraints financially, it forced us to be very creative. And I'm like, that's such a cool story. That does not show at all in this movie. My initial thought was, well, they used all the money that they could to get this thing going, because it does not feel like a movie where they had to simplify anything. Felt like they could have.
Simplifying in this movie do not go hand in hand at all.
Yeah. I do want to, point out, like you, I'm going to say some positive here.
Yeah, I've got some more positives too.
This movie is probably the funniest movie I've seen all year. I laughed a lot. It was great being in a theater full of people because there was a lot of laughing together. So this
definitely
movie is
laughed out loud
hilarious.
several times. I really laughed a lot.
Yeah. So I'm with you. This movie, as a entertainment piece, is a success.
Definitely.
Because it is so fun. So as much as I'm going to rip it and nitpick and talk about all the things that I thought were bad in it, at the end of the day, I thought this movie was hilarious. And so
really glad I saw it. Like this is going to be such a weird podcast, because I'm like, you've said this on different podcasts before, where it's like, I'm going to sound more negative than I intend, or I'm going to sound more negative than I actually feel about this movie. Like every 10 minutes, I'm going to be compelled to be like, by the way, I want to remind you, I liked this movie.
Yeah, so I tried to make myself in my notes. I was writing all these like complaints, and I was like, go through and write some positives, you know, mixed in with all your complaints. Like for every bad, I tried to write a good. That like,
Sure.
well, here's the flip side of that. Uh, so yeah, as I was talking about the bad being that the story is just a convoluted mess. That every part I look at, I go, why and what is that? I talk about just there's a lot of great jokes that come about because of the story. The story, like I said, is ultimately inconsequential because it's just trying to set up the fun interactions with characters and breaking the fourth wall. I did also write one of the good, like you said, was the villain. I thought the actress who I was unfamiliar with
Same.
was really good. Emma Corrin is the name of the actress who played Cassandra Nova. Seemed to have a lot of fun in that part.
I really like the villain in this movie,
Yeah.
and sometimes the MCU does suffer from a villain problem. Like these
Yeah.
small, like Thanos, they nail, but some of the smaller, like individual villains, they struggle with. Good villain here.
Yeah. The one thing I did write as bad for that, I said female Professor X was much more Scarlet Witch from Multiverse of Madness than any version of Professor X. And not just because personality. I was just sitting there going like, can Professor X actually do all the, like they, I know they talk about how powerful the
felt like she
professor
could
is with
do
his mind,
anything.
but yeah, they really made her, exactly. It's like, if we need her to do this or that, like she can just do it. She's basically
do it.
God in this world. So
Yep, that's fair.
wasn't really, and again, Deadpool movie. Maybe you're not supposed to sit there and line up. Does this actually fit? Does she have matching powers to Professor X? And of course, maybe it's just that's Professor X does have those powers. He just never uses them. That's sort of, I guess, the thing of Professor X.
He's got more control, and he doesn't have. You could, yeah, definitely. But I thought she did a good job. She, played it off like she had like this almost like a coolness about her, and I thought that worked, and I was really happy with that.
Yeah. All right, I think it's time we got to get into it. We got to get into the abundant number of cameos because, like you said, it's like half the movie is the cameos. The cameos were gratuitous. Like it doesn't even matter that that's kind of the joke in and of itself. I mean, Deadpool literally makes a joke when he's talking to Paradox. He's like, "Are we gonna be getting that Marvel money to have all the cameos?" The character says that, and he's like, "Yeah," and which does lead to one of my favorite jokes is when Deadpool kind of is like, "Excuse me," and he runs off to the side and it's like tells off Fox for a second.
That was really funny.
That was really funny.
It was.
That said, because they did that joke, I thought the whole joke of the Fox logo being in the void was a little overkill. But people laughed.
I'll say what, it did make me laugh.
Yeah,
It did make me laugh.
but a lot of the cameos, I was sitting there going like, I don't know why the people playing these characters even agreed to come back in this movie. Sabretooth, Toad, Deathstrike, even Pyro, even though he had a little more to do. It's kind of like, what? Why did y'all want to come do these cameos and be in this movie? Maybe a lot of people thought it was funny. It's like, oh, Sabretooth from the first X-Men's back and he's going to fight Wolverine. And then it's like Wolverine just cuts his head off and it's over. It's okay, great. Glad you brought Sabretooth back for that.
Yeah.
And then noticeably Juggernaut was a different actor.
It was.
I read in the trivia that when asked about not reprising his role, the original actor whose name is it Vinnie Jones?
Yes.
Yeah. He was basically just like, yeah, it's a real hassle putting on that suit. Like, man,
I appreciate you asking me, but no thanks.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's more the response I would have if I would. It kind of just goes to show like every other cameo character that I just mentioned is an actor who doesn't have a lot going on. So they're like, why not? Vinnie Jones has a little more going on in his life that he could be like, I'm not going to cameo and put on an obnoxious suit. So those were the cameos where I'm like, I didn't need any of these. I didn't feel like they did anything other than be like, I mean, literally what little Easter egg cameos would be, oh, hey, it's the guy from The Thing. That's all the purpose that those served. I don't know if you want to say anything about those. I don't want to hog the cameo conversation, but
So here's my thing, and this is getting into like some of the bigger cameos of this movie. Here's my thing. So I'll use an analogy. When my kids were little, my mom would give them like $15, let's say, and be like, here, this is $15 for you. Go to Casey's and you can just blow this money on whatever you want. And so my kids, like all little kids do, would go to Casey's and just blow the $15 on candy and soda and junk. And then they would come back, they enjoyed the candy and the soda and the junk. But in the long run, you have a stomach ache and you wish you would have saved your money. So, am I going to say that I didn't smile or get a little bit happy when, I'm just going to go ahead, and this is a major spoiler. So if you want to stop and go watch the movie, do it right now. So, here we go. Chris Evans pops up in this movie. I'm not going to say that when Chris Evans popped up, I didn't think it was kind of cool. And I literally had a reaction. Like, I was like, whoa, like Chris Evans. And then, spoiler, twist on a twist, he's not Captain America, he's the Human Torch. Okay, like that was, I'm not going to lie and say I didn't geek out about it just a little bit when it happened. Here's the problem, though. What did that accomplish in the MCU? It accomplished nothing in the MCU except muddying the already muddy waters of this multiverse in the MCU. So, yes, it was fun, and it got a big reaction in my theater, in the theater that I went with my son Ryan. We reacted. Ryan and I reacted. Whoa, Chris Evans. Whoa, he's the Human Torch. It's kind of cool. But ultimately, it's just like spending that $15 on candy. It was kind of cool in the moment, but in the long run, what did it get us? Right? That's how I feel about it.
You're exactly right. I did right. I think one of the best parts of the movie was Chris Evans' cameo.
He was great.
Not just
he was so funny.
He was so funny. They got great jokes out of him. I mean, the whole bit of Deadpool getting him killed and then all the jokes back to that. It was hilarious.
That was all funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I'll say two things. One, when he showed up, I knew immediately. I was like, he's not going to be Captain America. He's going to be the Human Torch. He wouldn't show back up in this role of the Captain America. And so when he did it, I thought it was a great joke and it set up very well. But I was like, I knew they were going to do it. And exactly what you said. I said, that really felt like we are burning down all of the old MCU. That was the moment. Because they're like, none of it's sacred and none of it matters anymore. We're really separating ourselves from it because, 5 years ago or so, they wouldn't have dreamed, they would have never dreamt of having a joke like that where Captain America shows up as a different MCU character that he's played. They wanted to keep so much space between that to keep the real MCU timeline and storyline, like I said, something sacred about it, and it's just all gone now.
And that is so disappointing to me as someone who has that Iron Man to Endgame run held in such high regard. This is just a real bummer to me that they are sacrificing, like you said, kind of the integrity of that. What do they call that? The Infinity Saga, I think.
Yeah.
They're sacrificing that for the kind of like the cheap pop. Oh, cool. We did the thing that nobody thought that it kind of sounded impossible, but then you kind of go like, whoa, cool, like Chris Evans is a Human Torch, but then you go, but wait a second, why did they just do that? Why? And I would rather have the kind of the integrity and the reverence of that Infinity Saga intact than I would have the chuckles from Chris Evans. And this is I'm not knocking Chris Evans. He's really funny in this. He is awesome at, he knows how to ride that line between, I could be the biggest tool in the room if I wanted to, and that cocky, he's great. And I loved the joke that Chris Evans actually did, or the Human Torch actually did say all those things about the villain. That was a really funny end credit scene, and it was okay, that's really clever. I would rather not have that clever moment and still have just this untouched, kind of portrait of Iron Man to Endgame that is just this perfect document in time in movie history where you go, dude, they had this 10, 12-year vision and they executed it flawlessly. And then they just walked away and it's just beautiful. The biggest frustration I have now with the MCU is the ship just keeps getting farther away from that shore and to no results. So now this is the second time since Endgame that we've had a character pop in and play a member of the Fantastic Four only to die 5 minutes later, and then they're not going to be that character in the MCU's upcoming Fantastic Four movie. The other time was John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, and now they've had Chris Evans as the Human Torch in Deadpool and Wolverine, and neither of those characters are playing those characters in the upcoming MCU Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, they did a similar thing also in this movie with Henry Cavill playing a version of Wolverine and another character we'll talk about in a second, where they're doing the thing like, hey, we know you're not going to get the version of the character that everybody talked about maybe happening, so we're just going to make a joke about or have a cameo where they do it, but you're not going to get it in a real movie. And it's kind of like, you know what we really wanted was you just to give us that actual character in the movie, but I guess we'll settle for this cameo joke appearance.
And once again, it's a funny joke. Like when that happened, I was like, they just straight up got Henry Cavill, and they even took a little dig at DC right after that, and I laughed. But again, what is that? What has that accomplished for the overall MCU picture? Absolutely nothing, except showing, we're the MCU and we can basically do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And then what happens is you fill the movie with all these cameos, and some of them are people and characters that I really like. Like, here's another big spoiler. Jennifer Garner is back as Elektra in this movie. I really like Jennifer Garner. I know the Elektra movie was terrible, but I thought she is a good Elektra, and she's a very likable actress who can really balance she can be in sweet rom-coms, or she can be a convincing kind of BA in these movies. It's cool to see her up on the screen. But if you think back at this movie, they gave her nothing to do. She had no cool lines, no cool action. You really didn't get to show off why she's a BA. Like what's so cool about Elektra? So you do these clever cameos, but then the people doing them and the characters really have nothing to do. And then they're just gone. So, and again, I don't mean to sound really negative because I like this movie, and like I said, I want to be forthcoming. These cameos got a reaction from me. I can promise you, I did not expect to see Wesley Snipes as Blade show up in this movie. So when it happened, I wasn't like, ugh. I was like, whoa, that is wild. But then when it's like on the drive home from the movie, once that kind of high has worn off, you're going, oh boy, this just further complicated things, and it's already a complicated mess.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. The team in the void that helps out Deadpool and Wolverine, as you said, it kind of gets revealed like one at a time as they're in this, cave or something. One of my favorite moments in the movie actually was not the movie itself. It was the theater vibe and reaction.
Yeah, it was a cool moment.
Well, I'm going to counter that a little bit. When it came out and revealed Elektra, and it's like, it does the movie thing, like the music kind of plays, and then there's almost like a pause, like, haha, yes, we're giving you Elektra. Dead silence in the theater. Yeah. Nobody reacted. And then Wesley Snipes comes out in Blade, and everyone's like, oh, Blade. And I was like, oh, man, that is hilarious.
Kind of a bummer.
Nobody cared about Elektra. Like,
oh man, poor Elektra.
Blade's here, cool. And then the one we haven't talked about yet is then we have Gambit, played by
Channing
Tatum. And I was like, that's funny. This is another one where it's like there was the rumors and the talk about how Channing Tatum was going to have a Gambit movie for years. I guess it was actually a thing being worked on and discussed, and then it just got shelved. It's never going to happen. And so then they're like, so here's, something for the fans. Here's him being Gambit a little bit. But I was like, him playing Gambit in a way he surely wasn't going to play if he played in the movie. Like, they made it so silly and so, I don't know, dumb. I was just like, this is maybe my least favorite part about the movie.
Yeah, I don't think I disliked it as much as you. I think because it did feel like you could just see Channing Tatum just having a blast up on screen. But again, it feels like they're sacrificing. It's like they're so in love right now with the high of getting that ooh and awe from the crowd, or that high of like showing off almost. Like, look what we got Channing Tatum to do, and look what we did. But again, you just want to sit back and go, okay, like that's funny, and Channing Tatum seems to be having a really good time. But what is it doing for the overall good of the MCU? Whereas, again, I'm going to reference the Infinity Saga, and I mean Iron Man to Endgame. They did some good fan service. I mean, not to this extreme where they were just bringing everybody in, but they were able to give you fan service, but you were still getting some really good focused movies, and you knew you were on that road to Thanos while still giving you some fan service. And now it's just like, if you're going to use that analogy, like they're driving the car, and instead of driving to their destination, they just take every turn they can. Oh, look, down here, if we turn this way, there's Gambit. If we turn this way, there's Wesley Snipes' Blade, and they've lost complete sight of the path in front of them. And I would rather not have Wesley Snipes pop up, and I would rather have the focus of like, where are you going now? So it's like in the old MCU, like if Thor 2 came out and people didn't like Thor 2, that's fine, but you still knew you were on the road to Thanos, and now you get this stuff and you go, what? Like, what does any of this have to do with anything other than y'all showing off about how wacky you can make things?
Yeah. I had forgotten, even when Blade shows up, until there's the joke, which is a great joke, where Blade says something to Deadpool like, I don't like you, I don't care for you, and Deadpool's like, you never did. And then it hit me like, oh yeah, Ryan Reynolds was in Blade Trinity, which was the infamously troubled shoot and thing where Wesley Snipes really did not like basically anybody in the cast, but really didn't like Ryan Reynolds. And I'm like, that's so interesting that now here's Blade showing up in Ryan Reynolds is now the big star, and it's his movie, and that's fun. I'm still with you. You're right. Like it demeans everything else around it for that moment. But I did think that was compelling as someone, like us who knows movies and knows that Blade Trinity history and what a troubled production it was. Like, it is funny to see that reversal for the actors. It definitely is.
And I thought it was really funny when, Wesley Snipes is like, and I'll, I don't remember what he says, but he's like, and I'll always be the only Blade. And then Ryan Reynolds just, even though he's got a mask on, he does that great, like, deadpan to the camera. But again, you're making a funny joke, and you got a laugh out of me, but it's also just shining a spotlight on what a muddled mess of crap this multiverse is. And that is the ultimate thing. I don't even place the blame on Deadpool and Wolverine. The problem is the MCU started this multiverse, and from best I can tell, they started it with no direction and no plan. And you said it before on a different podcast where you said the multiverse is just a stakes killer. And man, were you right. This multiverse stuff is a mess. I hope that if anything comes out of this movie is that they got all this multiverse stuff out of their system, because it is a mess. It's just a mess. It's not enjoyable. I'm not interested in it. I liked Spider-Man No Way Home, and I thought Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness was a good, entertaining movie. But you're giving me nothing except a headache, because I'm trying to sort all this multiverse stuff out, and it's all just going nowhere. We are spinning our wheels in the multiverse. Get us out of it.
Yeah, and speaking of the multiverse being a stakes killer, the other thing I was thinking of this movie is it really, a lot of people might say, well, it doesn't really affect Endgame, for those of you saying like, it's gone downhill or it's made it a muddled mess. We still have Endgame and it's not been affected by this. Well, it has been affected, because what this movie shows is like, hey, just the same way Deadpool could say, Logan's dead in my timeline, let's just go get a different Wolverine. What's to stop him from saying, okay, yeah, that emotional sacrifice Iron Man made, let's just go get us another Iron Man. He's not really, he's not really gone now, because there's infinite number of Iron Mans, or Captain America and his sacrifice that he made going back in time and then not coming back and aging out. Why don't we just go get another Captain America? All those things are just on the table now. I'm not saying they'll do them, because obviously a lot of it has to do more with the actors wanting to step aside from their roles, but it's the fact that they can do it, and audiences just watching go, well, why not? Why not just go get another Iron Man and bring him to your timeline when you need him?
Yeah, that was very well said. And that's one of the biggest reasons I think that first Infinity Saga works so well is because even though there's all these ridiculous things happening and there's the Guardians of the Galaxy and it's all ridiculous, it felt like there was still like real stakes involved, and it was like, man, if Captain America gets killed, like he's dead. And now it's just, the multiverse is just this lazy, like, it's like having this magical button where it's just like your easy way out button. And before you didn't have that. And so even though it's all ridiculous and Infinity Stones and all this stuff, and people can throw in like, and I've even had people tell me like, well, Endgame had time travel. Okay, that's a fair argument. But if you watch that Infinity Saga, Iron Man to Endgame, the time travel, and I'm like you, I don't love the time travel part of Endgame, but it at least fits in because you go, well, in Ant-Man, they talk about like it didn't just literally come out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Like, whether you like it or don't like it, it does fit within the context of that overall story.
Well, and they at least tried to do the butterfly effect thing of explaining you can't go back and change too much because it will change everything. So you've got to change as minimal as possible to limit how much you could use time travel as a cheat.
Yeah, and they make it very clear in Endgame where it's like, we yes, we can time travel, but we are only going back for the purpose of the stones. And we're only trying to undust whoever got dusted. No more, no less. So they do, even though it's this wild, time travel, they do kind of still limit the scope of it. It's not just like, let's go back and just change everything or anything and everything. It's, we're going back in time for this ultra specific reason. And then ever since then, man, the wheels have just come off. Now, luckily for Marvel, they got Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds to do this movie, and they can make this movie entertaining just out of sheer willpower. So, but like I said, the best way for me to sum up how I feel about this is really enjoyed the movie, really had a blast. Didn't leave feeling much better about the direction of the MCU. Actually feeling worse about the direction of the MCU, which is probably like 5 movies in a row now where I've left going, nope, they still don't have me convinced that any of this is worthwhile.
Yeah. All right, another cameo we have to talk about, which is, I imagine it might be the same one that we both talked about having spoiled before the movie, which is the character of Laura, which is the Wolverine clone from the Logan movie, the little girl, obviously a little more grown up now, shows up in the movie in that same scene with Elektra and Blade and Gambit. She's part of that crew. And I had seen a week before the movie on social media, it already exposed that she was in the movie. And
that's what I was talking about last week. That's the one that got just straight up spoiled for me. And it's like, why would you do that?
The thing I saw was a tweet where it was like she learned lessons from Andrew Garfield about how to keep her appearance in the movie a secret. I'm like, well, why are you telling that secret before the movie's even out? It's no longer a secret. She did a great job up to this point, and you're going to ruin a week in advance. But then I saw a headline today that said that they wanted to go ahead and leak that because Disney wanted to use her in the movie to market the heart of the film, like the emotional connection, our core of the film. And I thought, okay, mission unaccomplished because there is actually nothing emotionally core about her character in this movie. She exists for one reason, to have one little scene with Wolverine where she gives him some motivation to actually be an active participant, and that's it. That's her whole purpose in the movie. I don't even know that it really worked or fit. She didn't need to be in the movie. No. I'm just still annoyed by the... Again, not like it's a huge spoiling thing to find out that she's in this movie, but the fact that they just can't help themselves from giving those things away is really the thing that makes me angry.
It's super annoying, and that's such a good example, too. That's another example. It's like, I don't know if I've seen her in anything other than Logan. But you go back, and I actually went back and watched Logan this past week, and it's like, she's really good in that movie for what she has to do. But then, they bring her back in this movie, and that's fine. She has nothing to do in this movie. Nothing. So it's like, that's great that you're getting all these people to pop up, but you take that team of her, like, just take even her, Elektra, and Blade. The 3 of them combined don't have a cool scene or a cool moment. They just give them, like, at least Channing Tatum gets some jokes off and he's got the weird voice and stuff. The other 3 are just wasted. It's just really, it's really a bummer. And like I said, it gives you that, just like my analogy with eating all the candy, it gives you that initial satisfaction of like, oh, cool. Like Blade, I really, like I said, of all the bingo cards I would have had, you know, Wesley Snipes returning as Blade would not have been one of them. But, okay, so like he returned as Blade, and now they're trying to launch another Blade movie that they've already delayed like 4 times with a different actor. So it immediately makes this cameo seem, you know, less important, just instantly. And I got to say, too, I want to go back real quick to this Fantastic Four stuff. If I was this new cast of this upcoming Fantastic Four movie, I would be almost annoyed, like telling Marvel, like, would you stop putting other actors that people really like in these Fantastic Four roles? Because by the time our Fantastic Four movie comes out, everyone's just going to be annoyed. And they're like, well, I would have rather had the John Krasinski, Chris Evans version of Fantastic Four. And that's not what we're getting. So if I'm, you know, Pedro Pascal and all these guys who are in the new Fantastic Four, I'd be like, would you please stop doing that? You're already like watering down our Fantastic Four that hasn't even started filming yet.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about how people are going to feel about that cast when it comes out. Still think I don't know. I think it's got its own challenges. Just people haven't been able to make a good Fantastic Four movie yet. So the MCU's got its own challenges there. Speaking of the MCU having its own challenges, this is just a little side note. Before the movie, there was a preview for Captain America: Brave New World, and I got to be honest, I don't know that I've ever.
Less.
Yeah, I was watching, going like, I mean, I guess I'll probably see it because I just see so many movies, but
yeah,
my excitement level is at a 0 for that one.
So, I liked the trailer. Like I was like, because it reminded me of Winter Soldier, which is a movie I really like. Which I know you're not as high on it, but it reminded me of that kind of Washington D.C. espionage. Who can you trust? And I like that. But then you go like, so I believe that's going to be their next theatrical release, in the MCU's next theatrical release, which is not till February. And I do think that's a good thing to have some more space between these movies. But, you know, that preview gives you kind of like Winter Soldier type of vibes. And so you're watching it right before you watch Deadpool and Wolverine. And those two movies couldn't have different, further away tones from each other. And not that all, you know, and that was a big plus, like, whereas like, you know, in phase 1 or whatever, these movies all felt very distinct, even though they were part of this greater thing. You know, like Guardians of the Galaxy doesn't feel like it has anything in common with Captain America: The Winter Soldier. But Marvel used to be, when they were more focused, it felt like could somehow still make that work in this overall connected universe. And now something like Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't feel like it has any connection whatsoever to the new Captain America movie that's coming out. And the new Captain America movie feels like it has no connection to Thor: Love and Thunder that came out, you know, a year and a half or whatever ago. So now it just feels like just these random movies that are coming out. So I don't at all mean to sound so negative, but just as someone who has such a love for the MCU and such a reverence for those, you know, that initial saga, this is all very frustrating to me.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the fight scenes, the various fight scenes in this movie.
I would like to get a little more positive, because there were some of them that I really liked.
Yeah, it's some of the best stuff, but there's also, I do have some nitpicks amongst this as well.
Fair enough.
So one of my nitpicks is it's a common thing throughout the Deadpool movies, taking the ultra-violent fight scenes and setting them to really cheesy pop music.
They really lean into that in this movie.
Which is funny. It was at its best, of course, in the first one because it was such an original idea. It still worked a little bit in the second one. By the time this one had an opening scene where he's just whipping up on a bunch of TVA people to, I think it's Bye Bye Bye.
It is.
And he's like dancing between. I'm like, I didn't need another cheesy, I didn't need this. Like, I was having fun with the fighting. That said, that scene is hilarious. I love when he puts on the Wolverine claws. It's so funny when he gets stuck between the two guys he stabbed, one in the rear and one in the front. And he can't get the claws out. There's so much humor that I was almost annoyed that they were trying to still mine humor out of the music. I was like, just give us the funny fight scene that's cool.
I get it. I think to me though, it's like just Ryan Reynolds' just willingness to be so committed to that stuff kind of overrides the like, oh my gosh, we've seen this. Like, but I mean, Ryan Reynolds is so committed to that bit where he's doing the NSYNC dances and stuff, and so that stuff to me, it was like, you know what, this is familiar, but God, gosh darn it, you got me. So that didn't bother me so much. And just the originality of just like I liked the idea of like Wolverine's bones being these weapons. Like that was fine to me.
Yeah, we get two different fights between Deadpool and Wolverine. One when they first get into the void and they fight just kind of out in the open. That was good. Then you got the one in the car. I thought the one in the car was actually the best of the movie. That was
That's the one
fun.
I wanted to talk about. That was a ton of fun and. It's doing the thing, but man, they picked a great song, and then just keeping them in that car was great. I did enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah, and of course it's the setup of it being two guys who both regenerate and basically can't be killed, who are just going to sit there and just butcher each other for ongoing. It's just never ending cycle until they tire out from it. It works because. I think one of the things that I love about the Deadpool movies is in so many other movies you get the like, well, I know they can't really like hit each other or hurt each other with like their powers because they can't, we can't kill off these characters. You get scenes like the scene where they actually storm the bad guys in the void, like with Blade and Electra and all them. And my biggest complaint about a scene like that is it always drives me nuts that amongst all the fighting, in the background, you see so many guys just like machine guns firing and stuff. And you're like, who are they shooting at? There's a total of 5 good guys and they never have fire around them. Bad guys are just generically shooting to make it look like chaos is going on. Yeah. Why? Because you can't have them shooting the heroes while the heroes are fighting. The thing I love about Deadpool and Wolverine is you can let them be getting shot, but the thing is they get to keep going. And so that's what I love about it. So in these fights, they get to do things like actually stab each other and the fight can keep going on because they regenerate. And so the fights get to be, I love the choreography they get to do because it's not just, hey, we've got to dance around each other because any contact and we die. They get to actually just really go at each other. And
Yep, and that was great. And I was gonna single out the car scene also. That was really fun. Really, and I will say this, I will give Marvel credit. Like, they promised an R-rated Deadpool and Wolverine movie, and they delivered. There was no, like, well, they kind of skated towards it, but they weren't, they were completely willing to go all out. And so I will give them credit for that.
Absolutely. I really want to know if it was a real thing that cocaine was the one thing they weren't allowed to do, or if they just were mining that for a joke.
I feel like maybe that was a thing because they talked about that a lot in that movie.
Yeah. Well, what made me wonder is like, if that was really a note from Marvel, at what point does Marvel ever go like, hey, you can't be making fun of us for giving you this note so much throughout the movie? But maybe Marvel was just that okay with everything.
Maybe they were. And I will say, even though it was so annoying to me that they were like making fun of the fact that people think it hasn't been as good since Endgame, like, I hate it that they have to point that out because it's true. But I will say, like, I do want to give Marvel a little credit for having a sense of humor about it themselves, I guess. Yeah. I'd much rather them just fix the problem than be willing to let jokes be made about them. But, nothing is off limits to joke about in this movie, including Marvel and the MCU. So they are good sports, I will say that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, as long as you don't mind, if this doesn't derail what you want to talk about, was there like a standout moment or joke that you were just like, that's hilarious? Like what got you? Anything that you think is worth calling out? I had a couple.
There was definitely a few. I mentioned the one was when he sort of steps aside to say, "Take that, Fox."
Fox have it.
In much more vulgar terms, but it just something about the way he delivered that one that felt so like heartfelt was really funny. So I really enjoyed that one. Like I said, the stuff with Chris Evans and all the references back to Deadpool getting him killed or not and his denial of it. That was really funny.
You know what I actually really thought was funny?
There's plenty more, I'm sure.
I really thought Nice Pool was funny.
Yes.
And I think the most I laughed in that movie was when Nice Pool's like, I could break the fourth wall too. And he just looks at the camera and he goes, the proposal.
Yeah.
And then it's just like awkwardly silent and Deadpool kind of like does this thing. I was like, okay, that's funny. That is funny.
That was really funny. Yeah.
I really thought that was funny. And you got to give it to Ryan Reynolds especially, but Hugh Jackman as well. Like they also don't mind to make fun of themselves. So like, again, I don't want people to walk away here going like, man, Jeremy and Andy hated, Deadpool and Wolverine, because that is not the case. All my frustration comes from the overall picture of the MCU.
Yeah.
Not the movie itself.
So that what you brought up does bring up one other thing I wanted to talk about with both the fight scenes and cameos, and that's Wolverine and Deadpool versus the whole gang of Deadpools. I'm going to be honest, I just like any time it's hey, here's a whole bunch of replicas of the same person. Literally the only movie I've ever seen it really work in is the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movies. And it's because it's animated, and that's sort of the whole point of those movies. But in this one, when a whole bunch of Deadpools come out, I'm like, I just don't care. It had a bunch of cameos that I didn't even realize until I was reading the credits on IMDb. Like Matthew McConaughey plays the cowboy Deadpool.
I know. Blake Lively is Lady Deadpool.
I kind of suspected. I was like, is that going to be Blake Lively as Lady Deadpool? And then I thought maybe not. I thought maybe at some point her mask would come off and there'd be some jokey thing
so
there.
too,
and when it didn't happen, I was like, well, maybe it wasn't, but it was. It was Blake Lively. I think it was maybe one of their kids was the baby Deadpool.
Baby Deadpool, I heard
because it was a Reynolds in the credits that was. So, but and then that whole scene, like, is there some funny jokes there? Sure, like they fight through them all and then they all just regenerate, whatever. But it also is kind of like, so I don't know.
It was just kind of
didn't laugh at that.
A bunch of just money thrown up on the screen, I guess. Like the fights looked cool. It was violent. Like I liked how the camera just followed that fight. Like that's all well done. But again, it's just not really leading to a whole lot. Like I would much more impressed by, I don't know, the Captain America elevator scene in Winter Soldier, where it's like, that was cool. That was some character building. That was Captain America. Like he's being betrayed by these people. Like that meant something. Whereas this was just more like, look what we can do, so I didn't hate it, but it didn't, rock my world or anything. Yeah. I must admit, I did get a laugh out of Peter. Not the fact that he's like kind of the savior, but him, we'll just say kind of graphically being squeezed into that Deadpool suit and some very prominent stuff going on. Like, it's immature and it's dumb, but it did make me laugh. I'm not going to lie.
I should also say I laughed at Nice Pool when Ryan Reynolds uses him as a shield and then says, "How long does it take you to regenerate?" And he's like, "Regenerate?" He's like,
that was funny, and just Ryan Reynolds just like the Deadpool character we're with just being a complete selfish jerk who's like, and then he literally has no head and he's trying to give him like chest compressions, like. And that's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. This movie is really funny and entertaining. So it's like I almost feel bad for how negative I've been, and I'll say it for the last time. Like the cameos did get a rise out of me. It's just like my problem is with the overall picture. One thing I do want to shout out. This is like about the MCU as a whole, as a positive. When they promise you that they're going to deliver like on the comic book or the old school like costume design and stuff, they deliver. Because Wolverine looked awesome in his yellow suit. Yeah. Like and they deliver that stuff.
It was a great moment too when he actually pulled on the hood, which they get to the very end and they even Ryan Reynolds even makes a joke about, oh, you're saving that for the the big finale. And I was like, yeah, that definitely gets you. And you're like,
they nail that stuff.
Yeah, like, oh, I was a fan of this character, and I've always wanted to see him in the actual costume. Yeah. That was great.
So when they promise that kind of stuff, they deliver. I am just begging you, Marvel Studios, Kevin Feige, pick a direction and run with it and abandon the multiverse. Good try, not really, but you tried, you swung, but you have missed, and it just needs to stop, please.
Yeah. I think that would, if I had a note for the movie, like if they gave me the screenplay or an early draft of the movie, I'd say here's what you need to do with your finale: is have a finale that wipes out the whole TVA and just says, oh, we cut off all the access to the multiverses, they're gone.
That's exactly what Ryan and I said on the way home from the movie. We both were in agreement that we really liked this movie. It was really fun to watch it with him. But it was like, I really wish they would have just wiped out the TVA. And you know what? I hate that we have to look back and be like, man, Thor: Love and Thunder was a fail, but it was. So let's just erase it and move on. Pick your next Thanos, and let's just run with that if you insist on continuing to make these movies. But the multiverse stuff is a fail. I do not like it at all.
Yeah.
So
when I just got home from the movies, at family I'm staying with asked, they said, so what did you think of the movie? And my takeaway then was, I said, it is absolutely hilarious. I'm trying to decide if it's good.
Right.
So because I do think there's a distinction, and I think really what I'm getting at is how well is this movie going to hold up? Is this going to be a movie that I revisit a lot? And I don't know, because on the one hand, like, it might be a movie where I go, I just need to laugh some, so I throw it on, because it could do that. But I also don't know how much of the jokes are kind of the surprises and the to expect that, or it works the one time. So this is a movie I'm going to be very curious how I feel on a rewatch, especially a little down the road.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same as you. I don't know. I think there will be certainly some charm in turning it back on, and I don't even doubt if there aren't a few little jokes or remarks or comments that I even missed, maybe just because you're in a big theater and people are laughing, or if something was said 5 seconds after Chris Evans popped up, I guarantee you I missed it because the theater was still reacting to Chris Evans popping up. So in that aspect, I think it might be a good rewatch, but I'm also afraid too, now that they have Deadpool and Wolverine, that they have Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, I hope that we don't get like 6 more crappy movies, and then to kind of just fix it, they just go, well, let's just do another Deadpool and Wolverine movie and just let them do their thing. Because this movie is, a $94 million Friday, this movie is going to make just enormous money. So I'm a little nervous that that's just going to become their new fallback. Like, well, just let Deadpool go out there and be wacky and, so I don't know. I really had a good time with this movie. I really wanted to leave it feeling better about the overall, direction of the MCU, and I just didn't.
Yeah. 2 last things I wanted to say. One, just kind of silly. One, not any more important. But the first one is this: how'd you feel about Dogpool?
They didn't hide the fact that Dogpool was going to be in this movie. He was featured in some of the trailers and marketing and stuff. It was fine. I don't know that I needed like another 30-second sequence of Dogpool just licking Deadpool's face and mouth. It was kind of like, yeah, okay, that's fine. It didn't hurt the movie. I'm not like, give me more Dogpool. So I did love Nice Pool continuing to call himself Dogpool's papa. I did think that was really funny. So it's probably worth it to have him, just to hear Ryan Reynolds as Nice Pool saying papa.
Yeah, you're right. I love that they cast just the ugliest dog to be.
It was fine. It was fine.
So yeah, that's my silly thing I wanted to ask you. The other thing is this. There's not even a question. It's just, I was thinking about how important the Deadpool character is to Ryan Reynolds in his career. Mm-hmm. Because I have been a long time Ryan Reynolds fan, going back to Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. Yeah, when that show came out, and I was a legit fan of that show when it was airing, and I was like, that guy right there, that's my guy. Like, I'm buying all the stock in this guy, which is Ryan Reynolds.
Well, he straight up stole that show away from everybody else. He blew everybody else off the TV.
Absolutely. But having said that, so that's in mid-90s? So he had a 30-year career going on. Worked a lot. If you start trying to do the Ryan Reynolds Mount Rushmore,
it's tough.
Just pick, it is tough. Because he's been great for a long time, but he's just had a really hard career finding the right roles for him. And Deadpool was the movie that came on that was finally like, this is the movie that Ryan Reynolds has needed all along. This is the character he's needed all along. So, like, I kind of did the exercise of a Mount Rushmore. So I didn't throw this to you in advance, but it was really just something I was doing because I was like, I know it's actually harder than I would think. So I was like, Deadpool goes on there. And then I'm like, there's not a lot of obvious other picks. It starts to become just my personal preferences for what I think are good Ryan Reynolds, so like Just Friends, which I think is a really funny movie. Van Wilder, throw on there.
Yeah.
And I'm already blanking on what the fourth movie is that I threw on there because
Proposal, maybe.
It was not The Proposal, but yeah,
I mean,
just
just as far, yeah, it is tough.
I think it was like Free Guy or something. I was like, I don't know what to.
Oh yeah, I
put
forgot
up
about
there.
Free Guy. That's fun.
And it's
yeah,
fine.
Ryan Reynolds. It's fine. He's really interesting because it's like clearly he was just going to keep getting chances until Ryan Reynolds happened. Because like I said, I'm not lying when I say like I remember watching Two Guys, a Girl, in a Pizza Place, and I'm exactly like you, where you're just like, that guy's awesome. He has all the funniest lines. He has the best delivery. He is just bursting out of the screen on that TV show. So he was going to happen. And it finally just took the marriage of Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds and the Deadpool character. And it's really weird how that happens sometimes in Hollywood, where it's like some people get a couple chances and then their moment is gone. And Ryan Reynolds, it just felt like we're just going to keep giving this guy a chance until something sticks. And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll even say, like, again, I want to emphasize, that's not to say Ryan Reynolds just had a hard time finding anything he was good in for a long time. He was good in a lot of bad movies. Even Blade Trinity, I remember going like, wow, like Ryan Reynolds got really jacked for this movie, and he actually looked kind of like an action hero, but he's also funny. He was a little Deadpool-y in that Blade Trinity movie.
Yeah, it's not like Ryan Reynolds has ever just stunk up the joint and been like, man, Ryan Reynolds was awful in that movie. It was the movies that were awful. And then he Van Wilder was his attempt at like, I can be in kind of the raunchier type of stuff. But I remember he tried to do that one, like then he would try to get serious. Like he's in that one movie where I think it's called Buried, where he's buried alive.
Yeah.
And it was like, that didn't quite work because I really don't want to see Ryan Reynolds just buried alive for an entire movie. Like, he's one of those people where it's like his own persona kind of gets in his own, like sometimes he's just too Ryan Reynolds. So it's like I said, you end up where it's like, well, I don't want to see Ryan Reynolds buried alive under the ground. Like I want to see Ryan Reynolds doing Ryan Reynolds things. And then he found Deadpool and it really worked out for him. But yeah,
which I'm happy for. Yeah,
and I am too. I'm happy for him.
Sadly, I think you could probably almost say a very similar thing for Hugh Jackman. He just found his breakout role was that role. Like he was Wolverine, but I'm like, Hugh Jackman's really good. I don't think he's ever been bad in anything. But when I start to try to think of, well, if I said pick a Wolverine movie, pick Logan and put that on his Mount Rushmore, what are the other three Hugh Jackman movies going to be? I know, of course, a lot of people are going to automatically go, Greatest Showman or something, which is just not my style of movie. So maybe that's my problem, is I'm not going to pick Greatest Showman and Les Mis. But I start thinking through what else he's been, and I'm like, I guess Prestige was one that would go on there, but I don't know what else.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's like we would be, it would be a fault of us if we didn't point out like just how good these guys are in this movie and at playing these characters. But yeah, they've become, for better or worse, just so associated with these characters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
also, it's just not fair how. Yeah, and it's just so unfair how jacked Hugh Jackman can get for when he plays Wolverine. Like, dude, how are you just so ripped? Like, he's been playing. When did the first X-Men movie come out? Like 2000?
2001, I think.
Something like that. It's like, golly, dude, like you're got a little bit of age on you, and you are just shredded in these movies.
Oh, 2000. You were right. X-Men was 2000. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable.
All right. Well, one last time we'll say it, just because we've done a lot of nitpicking. We enjoyed this movie. I would encourage people to watch this movie as long as you're okay with the vulgarness and the violence, because it earns its R rating. That's for sure.
It definitely earns its R rating. They say some things in this movie where you're like, oh my gosh, they really just said that.
Yeah, for sure.
They do.
But if you can laugh about that stuff, there's a lot of laughs to be had.
There's a lot of laughs to be had. Yeah, and maybe because this, like I said, this movie is just killing it at the box office, and maybe that will reignite some kind of fire under Marvel Studios, and we'll get some more focus there. I believe as we're recording today, today's a Saturday. I think this evening they are scheduled. Marvel is going to be at Comic-Con, and there's a lot of buzz about them kind of announcing their future slate. So, I'll be very interested to see if that gives me any feeling of some more focus and stuff like that. So I know I'm not ready to just be like, well, it's been a nice run, MCU, but I'm detaching myself from this. I'm not ready to do that yet, but I do long for the days. I will go to my grave saying they should have just ridden off into the sunset after Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
Yep, but fun movie. No regrets, and I'm super glad we got to do 3 weeks and 3 new releases in the last 3 weeks. Long Legs, right. Twisters, and now this.
And I believe we will be able to keep that trend going next week for a 4th week in a row. Next week, the big release is Trap.
Yeah, and
I think that we both were planning to go see that. And
I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, I think it looks good.
I am too. Having another M. Night Shyamalan discussion. We had one, of course, when we revisited The Sixth Sense, but doing one of his new movies and talking about him and where he is right now. And then also, the nice thing about next week is next week we should be back together in person. The whole summer abroad thing is coming to a close.
It's over.
And it'll be nice to be able to do this face to face.
You are making your triumphant return.
Yeah. So a lot to look forward to. New movie, back together again in the same room. And hope everybody else is enjoying this ride that we're on, just like we are, enjoying these new movies. It sounds like people in general are going to see movies, so I hope that's the true people who are listening to us.
Absolutely, and I will just say again, we've talked about it several times. Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2 are not for me, but if that's what it's taking to get theater attendance back up, I'm all for it. Twisters is killing it. Universal approval rating from my family. We all loved it. I've seen it twice. It's a blast. I feel way, way, way better about the state of theaters and movies than I did even, a month ago when we were talking about this stuff. So,
yep, great month. July has been.
Yes, it has been.
Yep. And so the next time we see each other, July will be over, but hopefully the good times are still rolling. So
yeah. And I hope we can talk about how much we liked Trap and how so my biggest thing is I want Josh Hartnett to be awesome in Trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's my biggest thing.
I feel pretty confident he's going to be good in it. I'm excited.
If you had to judge it by the previews, it'd be yeah, I think he's really going to be a good villain. So, and also, you can't think about a Shyamalan movie without wondering if there's not a twist to be had in this movie. Seems like the trailer is willing to give a lot away, which makes me feel like there's it's like the twist the trailer gives you is that he's the killer, but I feel like there's another twist hiding in there somewhere. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe we should make a game of it. I don't know how we could do it, but we both need to make some twist predictions and see if either one of us can guess what's going to happen.
Write them down and then
and then when we come together, be like, were we able to guess what the twist might be? Yeah,
just for fun. Very well. Yeah, I'm count me in.
All right, and then people listening do the same. If you want to send us your guess of what the twist might be, and if one of you gets it, we'll share it on the pod.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week for our discussion of Deadpool Wolverine, and we look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
See you next week.